One of the crazy things about verbal abuse is that when you're being verbally abused by someone, they tell you that you're crazy. They tell you that they're not abusing you, which is what researchers call crazy making. So I feel like you're abusing me, right? But you deny that you're abusing me. And in essence, you're denying my ability or my right to feel the consequences of your actions.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Tynisha Renee here. Welcome back or welcome to my channel if you're visiting for the first time. This is Tynisha Talks, where we like to keep it real, raw, and transparent. Story times are very rare on my channel, but I really felt it was important to share this story because it can help someone who is at risk of being in a toxic, unhealthy, abusive relationship. Or if you are already in that situation, maybe it will help you with recognizing some of the things that you could be overlooking so that you know that the situation that you're in is not okay. I'm honestly not gonna do a whole lot of editing, so if you guys wanna play this in the background while you clean or do whatever you have to do, kind of like podcast style, I totally understand. So just to kind of bring you guys up to speed, I have been spending a lot of time working on my mental health, staying in a happy place, reflecting on my current experiences and my past ones, and just working with my counselor to figure out where areas of opportunity are for me to grow and have healthier dynamics moving forward. But anyway, I'm saying all this to kind of let you guys know that I'm reflecting on my relationships. I understand that I'm not perfect, and most of y'all are pretty cool in the comments, but I would just ask for you guys to politely refrain from saying things like, oh, you were stupid, you were ignoring red flags. I know that there were red flags. That's what I'm talking about today. I understand those things. So just try to make it more of a constructive criticism, progressive type of conversation versus it being like talking shit about me, because I already don't like the way the situation went. Okay, so as a general overview, this story is about my first encounter with someone who is what I would consider to be emotionally abusive slash toxic slash unhealthy. I've never had a situation where someone displayed so much anger toward me, did a lot of gaslighting, made me question if my thoughts were valid, if my experiences were valid. Basically just created a lot of insecurities within myself that I hadn't really experienced before. So before we get into the story time, I wanted to point out some of the key things that happen with verbal abuse. Name calling, using words to shame you, being overly critical, yelling, screaming, swearing at you, making threats. I just want to tell you guys these things so that you know the lens to view this story from, because a lot of those things did happen. So for the purposes of this story, we're gonna name him Rob, because child, he robbed me of my energy, okay? Robbed me of my energy, my sanity, all of that. I would say that Rob and I first started talking, like actually having communication, sometime in August. It was right before I started filming for the online dating show that I was on, Couple TV. So basically I was at a gathering. One of my homegirls, she had me in her story, like just showing everybody who was there. And he saw me on her story, asked who I was. She showed me who he was. I thought he was attractive. And so we kind of connected on Instagram from there. And before I move on with this story, I just want to clarify, because I know that somebody's probably going to point this out because y'all said this in my last story. I have no ill intent toward my homegirl who introduced us. I don't think that she fully understood how toxic he was as a person. So she and I have already talked about it. It's no beef. So girl, if you're watching this, no, I have no hard feelings toward you at all. But I just want to clarify that because I know that someone's probably going to be like, why your homegirl put you on with someone who was like this? So again, just wanted to throw that out there. So anyway, a little bit about Rob. He is attractive. He's tall. I love tall men. Very just clean cut, dresses nice, pretty charming. But what I really liked about him is that he held really good conversation. And I feel like that mental stimulation is something that I struggle with finding in a lot of people. So once someone can engage with me and hold a very deep conversation, mentally stimulate me, I'm in there. I'm like, you have my interest. So he and I are, talking back and forth on Instagram, just saying basic things about ourselves. He mentioned he was in school. I talked about how I create content. content. And then we just started having deeper conversations. There were some things that we didn't agree on, but for the most part, if we had different viewpoints on things, it was respected. And I really like the fact that he was strong-minded, because I'm strong-minded too. And I don't think that being strong-minded is necessarily a bad thing. What is a bad thing is when you start to try to force your viewpoints on other people or make them feel bad about their viewpoints. And that's eventually what started to happen. But at this part in the story, it hadn't happened yet. So dialogue was going really well. We transitioned from Instagram to texting to phone conversations to FaceTime. And we talked very, very frequently. We obviously had our own separate lives, so we weren't talking all day, but we still had daily contact with one another. So we had been talking for a couple of weeks. And I was like, yo, I'm really interested in this guy. Like, we have been getting along pretty well. But I did find it a little bit strange that he hadn't asked me out on a date yet, you know, because it's like usually if you're vibing as well with someone and you guys are from the same place, you ideally would want to meet them. So I'm like, why hasn't he asked me on a date yet? So I actually asked him. I was like, you know, just out of curiosity, I have a question. Why haven't you asked me out yet or asked to see me yet? So this simple question was the beginning of a decline, and I didn't realize it at that time. But when I asked that question, he got a little defensive. I won't say that he got angry, but he got defensive in the sense where he's like, well, do you feel like you're a person that needs to be in control all the time? Because I like to plan things out. It seems like you want things to be on your own type of time, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, bro, I literally just asked like why we haven't seen each other yet. He was like, well, why didn't you just say I want to see you? And in that moment, I'm reflecting. I'm like, okay, maybe I could have said it in that way. But I didn't mean for it to come across that way. It was just a general question, and he got pretty peeved about it. So that dynamic right there, where I'm being asked the question and I don't answer it in the way that he likes, that happened a lot, okay? And so if you're kind of reflecting on your experiences with someone, I think that is something I would consider a red flag. If a person is not happy with the way that you say things, or they want you to talk a certain way or answer them in a certain kind of way, that is an early sign that there might be some sort of a control issue. But anyway, the reason why he wasn't asking me out is because he actually was away in school, right? So he went to school in another state, and because of COVID and things like that, they went back in person. He was online before, so he basically had to move out there even though he technically lives in Atlanta, okay? So yeah, he basically explained that he was off in school for that semester. When the semester ended, he planned to come back to Georgia. Second red flag was when he started to make comments about how I presented myself on social media. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you'll see I post some workout content. I might post some pictures when I'm traveling. I might be in a bikini. I do all that, but I don't think that I handle myself in a way that is super disrespectful or disrespectful at all to someone who I'm dating. His viewpoint was that some of the things that I posted, it made it seem like I was trying to get attention from other men. Specifically, he got mad because I put up a poll and I was like, ask me anything, which I do a lot of Q&As as a way to interact with my subscribers. And he was like, I mean, you put a Q&A saying, ask me anything. You don't think that people are going to ask you sexual questions? Like, why are you trying to make yourself seem available like that? And I'm like, how do we get from 0 to 100? Like, I literally just asked, ask me anything, and you took it there, and we're not together. Now, I do want to expand on the whole thing where he said, you make yourself seem available to other men. I think the reason why he said that is because we had had a disagreement, okay? I don't know if I would call it an argument, but a disagreement where he didn't like the fact that I believed in dating multiple people. I told him from the beginning that I do date multiple people. I've said this before on my channel, and it's not something that lasts a super long time, but if I'm texting one guy and then I meet a guy who is super interested and we connect, I would probably go on a date, maybe 2 dates with both of those people to figure out who I have more of a connection with. And then I focus on that one person, right? So it's not like I'm juggling multiple different men for a prolonged period of time, but I'm not investing all of my time or putting my eggs in one basket too soon, because I do have a habit of doing that. I've always done that, and I have kind of learned from that experience, right? So anyway, the whole dating multiple men thing, and then the whole making myself look like I'm too available on social media, that was a pain point, and we started going back and forth about it. I said, listen, I like you, you know, I think that you're super cool, but I need you to understand that we are not together. So with you coming in and you're wanting me to change all of these different things about myself, I think at a certain point, I'm going to be receptive to what you say for sure. But at a certain point, I think that you need to analyze the person that you're trying to talk to and figure out, okay, this person is in line with what my values, my beliefs are, what I want in a woman, or they're not. But what you're not about to do is try to force me to change everything about myself to make you feel more comfortable. Now, another thing that he had an issue with was the dating show that I was on. When I was doing the show, I'm not gonna hold you, like, I really felt like I wasn't vibing with people in a romantic way, which is true. Like, I met a lot of great people on that show, but it seemed like the men who were on the show, they were interested in other women. So we would have group chats talking to the guys about the women that they were interested in, and it was all more of like a friendship type vibe. It wasn't anything that was romantic while I was talking to him. And so I let him know early on, you know, I'm a part of a dating show. He saw the promo that I used to do on my Instagram, so it wasn't a secret. But then that kind of tied in as well. So he had an issue with the dating show that I was scheduled to be a part of before I even met him. He had an issue with me asking questions on Instagram, and then the whole dating multiple men thing. So I heard his concerns, and something that's kind of a pro and a con, I would say, when I date is that I do believe in compromise. But what I think happens sometimes is I overly compromise, and that's something that I really need to reflect on within myself. Because when he said the whole thing about he doesn't like me dating multiple men, I was like, okay, well, maybe I don't need to talk to multiple guys. Maybe I'll just focus on him and see what happens. You know what I'm saying? So I was still doing my show. That was work. That was business. But outside of the show, I wasn't really talking to anybody else aside from him. And that was an adjustment that I made for him. Okay. The arguments, child. Like, even thinking about the frequency of arguments that we had is stressing me out. Let's say around this time, we're in like September, October. We still haven't seen each other. Every communication at this point has been virtual in some form because he's still away at school. When I tell you that we were arguing over like everything, I really don't even know like what all the things were that we argued about because it happens so often, but we just weren't seeing eye to eye on a lot of fundamental things. The way that we approach dating, boundaries in relationships, communication. In terms of communication, the biggest thing that we had an issue with is that when he got angry, the way that he communicated was just super, super, super unhealthy. He's the type to definitely raise his voice. He cursed at me on the phone before. One time we were on the phone and we had a pretty heated debate, and he started raising his voice. And I'm like, yo, who are you talking to? Like, I need you to pipe down. Don't talk to me like that because I'm not talking to you like that. And his response would be, you can't tell me how to talk. Just because I'm yelling doesn't mean I'm an angry black man. Everybody want to sit here and use these words saying somebody's abusive and exaggerating what I'm saying. This is how I communicate. And I said, listen, sir, I don't know who you're used to communicating with, but what I'm going to tell you is that if you plan to communicate with me, you're not going to raise your voice at me. You're not going to curse at me. You're not going to talk over me, because he definitely did that a lot. And so when we would have those type of dialogues back and forth, if he got upset, he would hang up the phone. And that's so rude. I think that is super rude to hang up the phone on somebody, especially if they're not talking to you in a way that is like super, super disrespectful, but he would do that. Like, he felt the need to hang up in that moment to cool himself off. So that was kind of like his thing. Okay, y'all, I'm gonna be completely transparent right now. I have literally been trying to convey to you guys how turbulent our communication and arguments were for the past about 10 to 15 minutes. I feel like as I'm just kind of re-experiencing these things by talking to you guys about it, I am getting a little like flustered and rattled and just like, how did I even tolerate this stuff? So please bear with me. One thing that kind of f***ed me over in this situation is that I am typically a person, when I see stuff like this, I'm out. I don't stand by and wait for more toxic behavior, because I've seen that with my mom and dad. They fought all the time. I always said that I did not want that type of situation. So even if it's a little sprinkle of something toxic, I usually be out the door. Okay, I'll be the first one out. Now, on the flip side of that, I think that I have kind of self-sabotaged in some relationships where I see some things as a bigger problem than what it really is. You know what I'm saying? And I think that I gave him a lot of leeway, or I was a little bit more gracious with him because I was very cognizant of that and I was trying not to do it. But the problem with that is that I ended up overlooking red flags that shouldn't have been overlooked. He also would say very passive aggressive things. Being passive aggressive and also gaslighting were like his top techniques. Like, he was so good at it, where you started questioning yourself and you're like, am I bugging right now for the way that I'm interpreting this? Am I being too sensitive? So one time we were having a conversation and he brought up the dating show again, and he's like, so is dating show. And he was like, so are dating shows something that you plan to continue doing? Like, is this something that you see as a career? And I was like, not really dating shows, but I would love to stay on TV. I really do like reality TV. I don't necessarily want to do the dating thing all the time, but I would like to explore other opportunities. And by doing these dating shows, it's a good way for me to build connections with producers and casting directors and, you know, people who can help me get to the level that I'm trying to reach. And so he said something like, oh, well, I don't know, I can't really relate to that because I'm not sitting here on YouTube recording videos, having discussions, doing dating shows. I'm really out here trying to change people's lives and make an impact, so I can't really relate. And when he said that, I'm like, are you trying to comfort me? It was very condescending, and it was like he tried to minimize the importance of what my goals and my passions are. And he's like, I didn't mean like that. He's like, I'm sorry if you took it that way. That's not the way that it was supposed to come across. You always saying that something that I say is passive aggressive. Maybe you're just being like too sensitive, like that type of energy. You know what I'm saying? I think that we can agree that most people would consider that comment passive aggressive. And I knew it was passive aggressive because it's the way that I freaking received it. You know what I'm saying? I feel like you are being passive aggressive to me and you're trying to minimize the things that I've accomplished and where I'm trying to go. But that was his technique. You know, he would always say things, I would respond to it, and he'd be like, I don't know why you see it in that way. Like, you're overreacting. You're doing this, you're doing that. That is gaslighting 101, okay? You have a legitimate concern, and that person is constantly throwing things out there to make you start second guessing yourself. And that is when things started to like majorly decline. I'm observing all these different situations, right? And in my heart, like my gut instinct was like, Tanisha, this isn't working. You guys are not compatible. This isn't working. This isn't working. But every time I would go in the direction of being like, yo, I don't think that we're compatible. Like, maybe we should just stop talking to each other. He would make me feel bad by kind of like getting emotional and saying that people always throw him to the trash and try to abandon him. Or he would say things like, you know, this is the problem with everybody nowadays. It's all for self. He always told me that I'm always for myself. I put myself first, which I don't think is a bad thing, by the way. I do think that a level of self-preservation is important in a relationship so that you can give to a partner in a healthy way. But he would make me feel bad for having those type of boundaries. And so when I would say things like that, he would say, you know, you're always thinking about yourself. When I'm in a situation, I try to make it work with that person. Like, I'm down for them. I'm trying to ride to the end. And he would always say stuff like that. When I'm in a situation, I'm down for them. I try to ride to the end. I don't run away super quick and give up on things. And I realize now, like now as I'm actually saying it, I think that this man was trying to prime me, like constantly say those things so that that would be my way of thinking. Like, he thinks this way, he keeps saying it. Okay, I'm hearing that. So now let me internalize this. Let me think this way so that when he starts doing all his bullshit, which would have only gotten progressively worse, my mindset would be, you know, I'm a writer. I stick with things to the end. I grind it out. I don't give up on people I care about. Like, ooh. The more I talk to y'all, I'm just realizing these tactics that he was using. And this shit is really crazy. Like, this is really, really crazy. I need a moment to collect myself. Like, for real. Like, wow. Okay, moving on. So anyway, as a reminder of the timeline, we met in August, September, October, just very turbulent months, honestly. We're now in about October, okay? And I've still been doing the dating show. I really didn't think I was gonna make it this far. And it started to dawn on me like, yo, I really might win this thing. And if I win this thing, I guess we gotta figure out what that means, because the winner of the show basically would get a free trip to Jamaica with the person who picked them to go. And then there were also 2 other winners, right? And you also get money. So I talked to him about it and I'm like, hey, you know, I think this is something that we should probably talk about, but how do you feel about if I win this trip to Jamaica? Like, how does that impact what we have going on? And he was like, you know, honestly, I just kind of let you rock with this whole dating show thing, but I don't really think it's a good look. What if one day, you know, some of my friends see that you were on this show and they're going to ask me questions about why I allowed you to do this, while we were talking. Like, it's just not a good look. So honestly, if you go to Jamaica, I'm going to let you know right now that we're done. oh, you're done? What happened to like riding for people to the end? You don't give up on people, but now all of a sudden you would be done. Okay. And you know what? That's a moment of reflection for myself, because in that moment I realized that he does think it's okay to have boundaries. Even though he jumped down my throat for having my own, he obviously does have boundaries. But it was a matter of him making me feel like mine were not necessary so that he could have total control over me. So, long story short, as y'all know, your girl went to Jamaica. I didn't give a damn what this man said. I worked hard for that. We put a lot of time into it. And so I went and I enjoyed my trip, and I really needed a vacation, and it was awesome. So anyway, after we had a lot of arguments back and forth, I finally told him, like, I don't want to do this anymore. We were on the phone. I'm like, I can't do this. This isn't going in a positive direction. And then he hung up the phone on me, right? Hung up the phone on me, and then let me show y'all these text messages that he sent to me. So he goes, be grateful for life and respectfully grow up. You're pushing 30, which is a blessing. If I'm single by 29, then we'll see who's really at fault. I rest my case and have nothing else to say. So just to give you guys a little bit of context, he said that because in a conversation, he and I were discussing, working on the things that we need to correct in order to have a healthy relationship. And I was saying how I really want to figure out what's causing me to have unhealthy relationships and unhealthy patterns, because I am about to be 30. I want to have a successful relationship. So that was basically an example of him taking something that I confided in him about and then flipping it back in my face, which, as we know, is never okay. So I'm just ignoring this man because I don't have time for the drama. So then he sends me another message and he's like, LOL, you unfollowed me on social media. You must be mad. I'm still not going to disrespect you. I've grown a lot since we met. You showed me that my temper was a little hot. Thank you for what was shown. Okay, I'm done, LOL. Didn't respond to that because what are we talking about at this point? And then he sends me another message after a while that says, I gotta talk to you, and I didn't respond. Then the next day he sends me another message and it says, I'm gonna make it up to you, and I didn't respond. And then a few days after that, he says, I gotta ask you something. Don't mean to bother you. So as you guys can see, it's just him kind of going in the thread. This happened back and forth for a little bit because I wasn't trying to hear anything he had to say. And then, child, this goddamn retrograde happened, okay? Now, for the girls who are into astrology, then you know what I'm talking about, okay? And for the people who aren't into it, I don't want to say that, oh my God, I started talking to this guy again because of retrograde. That's not what I'm saying. And they say that during retrograde, you're not supposed to revive old relationships or go back to people from the past because it usually doesn't turn out good. But guess what? He was one of the people who was contacting me, and he had been texting me a lot, and I was just ignoring his messages. And then finally, I did cave in. I'll be honest and say that. He ends up inviting me out for breakfast because at this point, he's now back in Atlanta, right? Before, remember, we hadn't met each other. And he's like, I would really love to meet you. I'll take you out to breakfast. We could talk about everything. I was really curious to get to meet him in person, but I also wanted to know what he had to say. For me, an issue that I find within myself is that I always have this constant need for like closure, you know what I'm saying? Because the way that we close everything out, it wasn't really in a good way. Like we didn't have a healthy conversation to mutually agree to separate. So it was just like this open tension in the air. I cut this person off, like they weren't good for me, and that was that. I really wanted to rectify that. Whether, I decided to talk to him again or not, at least I would have some form of closure. During breakfast, he explained that he had been getting professional help for himself. He realized that he had an anger issue. He realized that there were a lot of things that needed to be worked on. Apologized for everything that he said. He was like, you're a good person. You didn't deserve that. My feelings were hurt, so on and so forth. In that date, it seemed like he had a lot of accountability. But one thing that I brought up to him is like, I hear you right now and everything that you're saying in my ear, it sounds nice. But realistically, it's not like we haven't been talking for over a year, right? It's been maybe a couple of months or so. And I don't really think that you did a complete 360 in that short amount of time. And I was like, I'm not trying to discount any growth that you've made or anything like that, because that's awesome that you're working on yourself. But as a person who is actively working on themselves, I know that those changes don't happen overnight. So I know that there's still things that need to be worked on. So that brunch date kind of unlocked us starting another go round. We tried to give it another shot. you couldn't deny, like, there was a chemistry there when we met each other in person. I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. One, he's attractive, but two, he seems a lot more level-headed. So maybe this can go in a good direction if he keeps working on himself. But I did let him know, I'm like, you know, I really feel like I have to pace myself. I really just want to take things slow and see where it goes. Okay, cool. He seemed like he was okay with that, or so I thought. I'm not gonna lie, you know, he was doing well for a while. We went on other dates, you know, we started to meet up more frequently, still having FaceTime conversations, and I was really thinking that it was gonna go in a good direction. And what I have a tendency to do when I'm talking to a guy and it's headed in a good direction, or what seems to be good at that time, is that I romanticize things, okay? And I really have to stop doing that. I start thinking about what the wedding's gonna be like. Oh, we're gonna have kids. We're gonna do all this, and that. And I get so excited and my emotions get wrapped up into it that I feel like, again, I can overlook red flags. And lo and behold, those red flags, they did start to come out again. He got better with his anger in the sense that he wasn't cursing at me, but we did have conversations where you could tell the tension was there. I would say something, he's talking over me. I would say, please stop talking over me. He's still talking over me. Like, that type of thing was starting to happen again. And I'm like, bro, here we go again. But then every time I would say, like, I feel like you're kind of going back in the direction in that space that we were in before, that we agreed not to go back to, he would be like, I hate that you're bringing this up. My anger issues are a boundary for me, okay? My anger issues are a boundary for me, and you keep bringing them up, but you expect me to respect your boundaries, but you don't respect mine. Manipulation, again, 101. My boundaries are in relation to how I want you to treat me and what my values are. What you're saying is a boundary is we can't talk about anger, even though every interaction that we have, it feels like you're always angry at me. So that's something that we have to talk about. But that's how he would flip things, right? To take the accountability off of him and make it seem like I was doing something wrong. Ooh, my Tata's trying to show out. My bad, y'all. My bad. But this time around, something that was a pain point was sex or lack thereof, because we didn't have sex. I've never had sex with this man, by the way. And in hindsight, that's such a blessing, because I know that when I do have sex with someone, I tend to be very emotionally invested. And he knows that, because we had a discussion about that. You know, I kind of told him why I decided to practice abstinence, because I think that's an important conversation to have. Like, I'm abstinent, just so you're aware. Or even if I'm not abstinent per se in that moment, I do take a little bit more time to have sex with someone, because I want to build that bond with them. I want to make sure this is a safe space for me to be vulnerable, and that vulnerability is attached to sex for me. So I've explained those things. We talked about these things before, and he knew that. But again, sex started to come up again in conversation. His standpoint was like, you know, we've been talking since August. It's been several months. Why haven't we had sex yet? And I explained to him, I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, we've been talking since August, but I literally just recently met you in person. And those previous months that we had together, they were rocky. So if you're using that as some sort of a timeline to say, look, it's time for us to have sex, that doesn't resonate with me, because I don't feel like I'm quite sure enough about you yet where I want to dive into that level of commitment. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, y'all. I had to take a little break. I don't know if you guys see the difference. If the lighting is different than what it was before, it's because the sun is setting behind me, and I think it's doing something weird with my settings. But I do want to finish the video, so we're going to push through it, okay? So if you're still rocking this far into the video, thank you for listening to my story. I appreciate your support. I keep stopping and starting again with this recording, and I realize that I'm feeling anxiety as I'm talking about this, and it's really blowing my mind that this bothered me as much as it did, and I didn't realize it until now. So I'm trying. I'm sorry if I'm winded at different parts of the story, but I'm trying. So in addition to having sex, he was very adamant about getting nudes or recording sexual acts. He wasn't necessarily asking me in that moment, but he would repeatedly ask me this question, like, how do you feel about recording yourself having sex or nudes? And I'm like, we talked about this before. My response was that that's something that I don't feel comfortable doing with just anybody. If I do it, I would rather keep the things on my phone so I have possession over them to avoid any chance of it getting leaked. Someone hacking your phone, you lose your phone, somebody get it. Or if you decide that you don't like me one day and you want to just share it with the world, like, that's something that you have to think about. That's the reality of sending nudes and recording yourself having sex. We've seen it time and time again. So anyway, the most recent time that we talked about the whole video recording and things like that, he was like, yeah, I think that might be a problem in the future. And I'm like, it might be a problem in the future. A problem for what? And he's like, I just feel like that means that you're choosing your image or your brand or your career over your relationship because you're concerned about things getting out. It means you don't trust me and you care more about how the public sees you versus basically satisfying me, keeping your partner happy. And he's like, it might be, you know, a video one day, maybe another day you're choosing other career things over me. Literally just started to spin it into something that was never intended to be that way. You know what I'm saying? This is something very specific, and to apply that to the entire relationship and make me feel bad about it, it just felt like another form of manipulation. Anyway, he goes on to say that, you know, it just feels like things have been progressing slowly. You haven't invited me over to your house. You haven't really wanted to have sex. We don't really talk about sex. And then now this thing here, I'm just concerned that this might not work out if it's going at a pace that's slower than what I want. So again, we're going back into this dynamic where we're arguing over things like that, fundamental things that seem to be a problem. You know, I think that women, if you're watching this, if any man is pressuring you to have sex, if he can't understand your standpoint on why you want to wait to have sex, I think you really should reconsider if that's the guy for you. You know, even if he does like you, but it's a problem with waiting, then he's not the one for you if he has a problem with waiting. Like, you will find someone who is more in line with what you need, making sure you're secure, making sure you're comfortable, and you guys can respect each other's boundaries. But I don't believe that even though you want sex, you should force your partner to try to be ready to have sex before they are really ready. So at this point, I have given you guys a good number of examples of why he was a problem, right? So you can see it was a pattern. This is a consistent pattern. This is really just who he is. And I felt that internally. Like, I was really struggling. It got to a point where my anxiety was high. We would have a conversation and I would wake up the next day and I'm like, I feel like he was being manipulative in that situation. Like, I'm not feeling good about how that conversation went. And this was like becoming normal, where I felt this state of discomfort. I knew it was a problem when I felt like I had to get insight from other people, because I couldn't figure out if my concerns were legitimate. Like, I was just really second guessing my own self. If you're verbally abused, mentally abused, physically abused, whatever type of abuse, you really start second guessing your own ability to make decisions that are right for you. And so I would talk to my friends about him and they'd be like, yeah, I don't know, Tynesha, like he seems like he might be a problem. I don't know. And so in my last counseling session, I brought him up and I'm like, you know, I'm talking to this guy, but I don't know, there's things about him that are concerning. And she's like, well, what's concerning? And I was like, I don't know, he just gets really angry. And when I said he gets angry, my counselor's face kind of showed concern. And when I saw that she was concerned, y'all, I cannot explain why this happened, right? I can only tell you what happened. Something flipped in my head where I instantly decided to minimize the stuff that I was experiencing with him, because I knew that she would tell me to stop dealing with him. So as soon as she showed that face of concern, I was like, well, I mean, he does get mad, but it's more so like we just disagree on things and he always wants to debate. I didn't mention the cursing. You know, I didn't mention all the manipulation, the pressures about sex. I didn't talk about any of that. And I hung up with that counseling meeting and I was like, bro, this is a problem. Like, this is a problem. I just lied to my counselor to cover up the things that I'm really experiencing with this man. And it kind of reminds you, again, if you watch movies about women who are in abusive relationships, they start to make excuses for the men, right? They start covering up bruises if they're being physically assaulted. If their friends or family bring up a behavior that seems problematic, they'll be like, he just had a bad day, or, you know, making excuses for the guy. And I'm like, oh my God, like, am I doing this? Like, this is not okay. And that was like the, sis, you need to wake up. So after that call with my counselor, I prayed, y'all. I was just like, God, my angels, the universe, whoever is watching over me, who got my back, please send me a sign that this is not the man for me. If I need to be running in the opposite direction, I know y'all probably already sent me countless signs, but please give me a surefire, you need to leave, this is not the situation for you type of sign. Ciao. When I tell you God comes right on time, never a second, a minute, an hour, a day late. God, the universe, all y'all, I'm so thankful for y'all because they really show out. The day after that, we were supposed to go on a date somewhere in Atlanta, right? So we were gonna do something in the evening. previously in that day, we had been having a conversation about how his exes view him, right? And I purposely waited till the end to say this part of the story because I feel like it would connect further. But one thing that I will tell everyone, and this advice might be different than advice you've received in the past, I am an advocate for asking people about their exes. A lot of people try to avoid talking about it when they're getting to know someone. But if you don't know what happened in that past relationship, you can't figure out, one, if they really might have been the problem, like the major problem in the relationship. But two, you can't figure out what they learned from that. You know what I'm saying? And so when we would talk about our exes, or if he would get angry, for example, he's like, everybody tries to make me out to be the bad guy. And I kind of expanded on that. I'm like, well, what do you mean when you say people try to make you out to be the bad guy? And he's like, I mean, people will say I got anger issues, I'm controlling. Like, these were things that he had said in the beginning. And that was something that I kept in the back of my mind. I'm like, all right, people are saying these things about him. And then when I started to see it for myself, I'm like, dude, this is a freaking pattern. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is something that he just repeatedly does with different women. Before, he tried to make it seem like, you know, the women that he was with, they were pretty hot-headed. They did X, Y, and Z that resulted in him lashing out the way that he did. And now I'm like, bro, I know for a fact I haven't like raised my voice at you in a way where I'm talking down on you. I haven't done anything crazy to you, and you acted crazy to me. So the common denominator is you. So anyway, this kept coming up in conversation. So after I had that talk with my counselor, it was sitting on my conscience because I had been having these thoughts where I'm like, yo, I think this dude is an emotionally abusive person. Actually, I had a talk with one of my friends. After he sent me that first string of text messages, I was like, I'm worried that this is an emotionally abusive person. I asked him a question that day that we're supposed to go out on the date. And I was like, can you tell me a little bit more about your exes? I'm like, I feel like we've had conversations before, but it's always very vague, where I don't quite understand what happened in the situation. You'll give basic information, but I need details. And so he starts going into details about what his exes say about him. And now he's saying, oh, they used to say that he was verbally abusive, that he seemed like he would be physically abusive one day, even though he never was, that he seems like he would be a murderer one day. He was saying all types of things. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God. When he first mentioned verbally abusive, I'm like, there it goes. Like, I see why they would say that. And so I asked him, I'm like, well, do you, now in hindsight, do you agree with what they were saying? I'm like, do you see how in that situation you could have been in an unhealthy space and been verbally abusive? And he really didn't see anything wrong with his behavior. He didn't seem remorseful at all. He said, yeah, I did have anger problems back then, but I feel like they just pushed me to that point. And as long as you respect me and you stay on my good side, you wouldn't have to worry about that. And I'm like, hold on. So it wasn't a type of dialogue or vibe where it was like, I learned from that. I feel horrible. I would never do that again. I would never do that to you. I appreciate you. I value you. Just all those things to make someone feel reassured when they've heard that you were pretty toxic in the past. It was just like, yeah, as long as you don't like cross my boundaries or double cross me or whatever, I won't do it. In the situations that he was explaining with his exes, I won't go into detail because that's not my business, right? But what I can tell you guys is that they had relationship conflicts that probably were valid, but the response that they got from him wasn't warranted. They might have been on a level 2. He went on level 10. He said that with one ex, he threatened to assault her father because he knew he couldn't hit her. So he said, I can't hit you, but I will beat your father or do something to your father. And I'm just like, oh my God. So as I'm hearing him say all of these things, I'm like, yeah, this is confirmed. This was the sign from the Lord. Like, this ain't it. And the fact that he's not remorseful, like, I know that this would be the case in our relationship if we move forward. And I told him, I was like, look, that's going to be a problem for me. I was like, straight up, if you ever try to talk down on my family, say anything about anyone I love as a way to hurt me, hell mother, no, I'm very protective of my family. And that's where I would draw a heavy ass line. So we're talking back and forth about this. And we're not seeing eye to eye. He's trying to justify why he felt like it was okay. And he's like, you can't tell me how to respond when I feel like someone violated me. If someone violated me, I'm not going to care about boundaries. You violated me, so I'm going after who you love. I don't care. And I'm like, nah, that's not the type of energy that we have. I have had a lot of men violate me, but I would never come out my mouth to speak ill on their family or anyone that wasn't involved in the situation, because that has nothing to do with them. So we're going back and forth. We're on the phone, and again, he's talking over me. I'm saying something, he's talking over me. I'm like, you're talking over me. He's still talking over me. Yeah, because I'm like, don't talk over me. So we have this back and forth dialogue. I don't know what it was, but it was like a feeling of calmness just came over me. And I felt like I was outside of my body hearing myself say this, but I was just like, Rob, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And I said it just like that. That's literally all I said. Rob, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Do you know this man goes, you don't want to talk to me? You bitch, you could suck my d-. Started cursing me out on the phone. And then I just hung up, or maybe he hung up. I don't know who hung up, but the phone hung up. I blocked his number immediately because I'm like, this is the sign that I was waiting for. All of this happened before I was supposed to meet this man in person to go on another date. And we are absolutely done at this point. He literally texted me from 2 different phone numbers to continue to say negative things about me. I'm gonna put the text messages on the screen so you guys can see how angry he was and how he just flew off the lid. And again, I never texted him anything. I didn't respond to this text, but he literally just went off.
All right, y'all. So as a disclaimer, I just want to say that I really don't like swearing this much, but if I don't say everything in this text, you won't get the full effect. So please excuse the profanity. If you got your TV up or your phone up on speaker, you might want to turn it down because the text message isn't good, okay? So he goes, you could definitely suck my fucking dick, you dumb bitch, because if you cross my boundaries and not give a fuck, but act a bitch ass about yours and expect someone to respect it, you must be out your fucking mind. You are too fucking old to be acting like a child. Run, little bitch, run away, because you will never have the privilege to speak to me ever again. Ever. If you see me, don't speak. Simple. But lastly, you are the problem in each thing with the victim playing, and I don't give a fuck about nothing. Don't ever disrespect me. Talk to your fucking friends like that, not me. You bugging. Now fuck you and have a nice day. Lotto from 8 Mile Voice.
Oh my gosh, I feel like this freaking story time is turned into a movie at this point because it's so long, but I'm gonna close it here. We obviously parted ways. That was that. I got called out my name so many different times. He said some very low blow things, and here we are now today. So emotionally, I'm fine. I think that the biggest thing for me is that I realize I have a lot more healing to do. Just focusing on like my past traumas, insecurities, whatever it is that's allowing me to attract these type of people. I need to work on that because obviously he saw something in me where he felt like he would be able to manipulate me. Obviously it didn't work. That's why we butted heads, right? But he saw something in me where he thought I would be an easy target to have that type of relationship with. And so now I'm like, all right, I got to take a step back and figure out what I did wrong. You know, I think that in hindsight, one of the things that I messed up on was revealing my traumas, right? And you know, sometimes telling people about your traumas, it could benefit the relationship because they know how to navigate through them. But at the same time, I think it caused trauma bonding for sure because we shared things about one another. But when we would get into disagreement, some of the things that I shared with him, I felt like they got brought back up in arguments and he kind of threw them in my face. I also made the mistake of not sticking to my boundaries. You know, my boundary from the very beginning is don't raise your voice at me. You can be angry and it's okay to be angry, but you need to learn how to process your emotions like an adult. Cursing at people and, you know, saying all these things and then trying to apologize later, that's not okay. And I said that, but I was allowing it to repeatedly happen. So in his head, it is okay because you're letting me continuously do it and not trusting my intuition. My intuition was telling me from jump. Literally, if I had listened to my gut instincts in September, October, it wouldn't even gotten to this point. And now here we are in freaking February, March, and it's kind of blew up to this type of situation. And so I've learned that that voice in your head, that women's intuition is never going to steer you wrong. And if I'm unsure about someone, just pray. Pray for discernment because God, again, the angels, universe, whoever you believe in, they're not going to steer you in the wrong direction. So anyway, I am about to end it here because, again, this video is very long. I have things to do today. But I want to say that if any part of this video resonated with you, be mindful of the signs. Like if something is telling you that it's not right, it's probably not right. And it's better to get out of the situation as soon as you can before it progressively gets worse. Don't allow the fear of being alone to cause you to accept behavior that is way less than what you deserve. And I think that that was probably one of my biggest takeaways from this whole situation. I kind of have it in my head that, oh my God, I'm getting older. I'm going to be 30 soon. Like I can't keep just cutting off every guy that does something wrong because then I'm always going to be single. You know, all of these messages that we hear about women being too picky and, you know, they're the ones who always want to leave and blah, 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 all of this, that kind of got ingrained in the back of my head. I see that now. And it allowed me to deal with something that just wasn't good. Like it made my anxiety really high. I never want to feel like that again. And I hope that any of you watching this will never have to experience that. I really, really do, because it wasn't good. So I'm hoping that he gets help. Even though he doesn't deserve any sort of sympathy from me, I really hope that he gets the help that he needs, because if he doesn't, one, he can really hurt someone and his life is going to be ruined, right? But you don't want to go around hurting people. So I'm a little bit concerned for women who encounter him in the future. I'm going to be completely honest, because on the outside, on the surface level, at first he seems like he's a pretty charming guy, and then all hell breaks loose once you really get to know him. So I don't know. I'm gonna pray for him, and I'm gonna just leave it at that. But I'm about to head out of this. I need to really go decompress because I feel like my emotions are kind of riding really high now. My next couple of videos will be focusing on the relationship sector. We are gonna go back into my spiritual journey and really just have those transparent discussions and get down to the bottom of what is causing this disconnect in my romantic relationship. So I'm really looking forward to taking this journey with you guys. And if you've made it this far and you're not subscribed to the channel, why haven't you subscribed yet? Because you had a lot of minutes, child, to subscribe to the channel. So please help me out if you enjoy my vibe. I am very close to my 6K goal, and I'm looking forward to continue growing with you guys. But I'm gonna go ahead and peace out of this video. So as always, stay safe, stay blessed, and until next time, y'all, bye.